Well, welcome back to Coffee Conversations presented by the State Line Collective. My name is Craig Flack. I am your host, and today we've got an excellent episode for you. I had the opportunity to sit down with Rod and Barb Carpenter today, who you may not know their names, but you likely have heard of their work. They've become prolific philanthropists and fundraisers around the Mercer County area. Through their fundraising, they've helped a number of organizations. They've done it in unique ways. They've partnered with first responders to honor them. And it's just been a really unique story to hear what God has done in their life and how they've raised a tremendous sum of money for some great causes. So without further ado, I give you Rod and Barb Carpenter and their awesome story. Well, welcome, Rod and Barb Carpenter. I'm so glad to have you here on the second episode of Coffee Conversations. Thank you guys for coming in. It is great to have you here today. I would just love for you to introduce yourself as people. We find that we have watchers of these videos really all across the globe, but we mostly are in the Mercer, All Glazed, Dark, kind of state line area. Would you just introduce yourself for folks that might not know you?
Yeah, I'm Rod, and this is Barb Carpenter. We have been married as of July 20th, 49 years. I'm 68 years old. She will be 68 years old. And first, too, Craig, we want to really thank you for this opportunity. Barb and I feel like with doing this interview, we are representing all the missions that we have done.
Absolutely.
Over the past several years. It's not just us, it's everybody out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm super excited for people to get to know your story because it is very unique. And one of the things, as I've gotten to know you through just different workings in the communities and being a part of organizations that your missions have supported, it's just been an incredible story of how God has worked in y'all's life to get you to that point. I want to make some viewers wait a little bit for those stories, as they might know you from raising prolific funds for some awesome organizations, but it didn't start that. You guys are like me, which I feel a connection in that you're not from the Grand Lake area. There's not a whole lot of transplants in this region, but how did you guys wind up in the Grand Lake area, and when did you come here?
Well, we lived in Lima for, 38?
Okay, so you were in the region, just not directly there.
Yeah, for about 30-some odd years, and we lived out in Bath Township, and it got kind of the point where some of the crime in that was kind of migrating out into that area. And I was probably within a few years of taking an early retirement. And we had a little family situation going on, and we just kind of thought, okay, we need to kind of get out of Dodge a little bit and try another area. And we'd always came over here, over in the lake area to, restaurants to eat, and, everybody seemed kind of friendly. And so we'd kind of pegged Salina. And one thing we noticed when we came into town and was kind of looking around at homes was that everybody waves at you.
Yeah.
If you waved at somebody up in Lima, and nothing bad about Lima, but if you waved at anybody up there, it's kind of like they might look at you kind of screwy, But down here, I mean, even if they got their back turned to you, they hear a car go by, the hand goes up,
Yeah, and I noticed people, everyone leaves their garage doors open during the day and all that stuff. My car, I'm from Toledo, my car was stolen from in front of my parents' house. I mean, you didn't leave stuff on the porch and stuff like that. Here, you drive by and people have their doors open and stuff. It's just, it's an awesome community.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, when we moved over here, you probably know what I'm going to say. The project manager, we built a home, and he was leaving things unlocked. And he says, well, this is, Rod kind of mentioned it to him. He says, this is Salina, nobody takes anything, it's all fine. So, and we were kind of like, oh, that's good to know.
Yeah, and we hope we keep it that way.
Yeah.
So, Rod, running's always kind of been a part of your story. I've seen some old, maybe not as old as you'd want them to be, but they're older photos of you, a young man, doing marathons and stuff like that. When did you start running? I'm the kind of guy that runs when someone's chasing me. I have the natural kind of running. You do it for fun. When did that start? Were you a young man when you started running, or?
I actually, the first time I ever did, running per se was ran cross country think it was my sophomore year in high school. And it was only because we were made to do it. Baseball players, if you didn't play football,
you had to
do cross country. So we would do that, and we had a fella that was coaching us that pretty well overweight. He definitely wasn't a runner, and so we would get, a few of us that didn't want to be there would get away from the high school and start screwing around in that, which obviously showed up in the meets. But anyway, we did some running then, and but that was it until I think it was 1978. And I was born in 54, so I was 24 years old. One thing that I always I thought was really neat was when watching the Olympics, was watching the marathon, and seeing these guys run, and they're making it look so easy and be running so fast for so long. And, I always kind of thought that might be kind of cool to try and do it, but just never went out and ran. But finally in I think it was 78, I had this right knee operated on from a basketball injury that I had. And the doctor told me I could do two things that summer, either swim or run. And if I ran, he said, don't jog, meaning run slow. He said, you go out and you sprint, run fast. So swimming to me was boring, so I started doing that. And then one of her friends that she worked with said, I guess she was running, said, hey, let's run a 10K that they were having in Wapak. And so, okay, did that. And it just kind of went on from there. And I eventually began getting more interested in running. And in 1982, I ran my first marathon, a Marine Corps marathon in Washington, D.C.
Okay. Now, how many marathons have you run total? Do you know off the top of your head?
14.
Okay. When was your most recent?
I'll laugh at that because the most recent was in June of 2019.
Okay.
And that was the last one I ran. And
was that one up in Minnesota, if I remember?
Well, it was supposed to be, but it was during the pandemic, so they did a virtual, and I ran it around the lake. And fortunately, Kevin Olding ran the last 10 miles with me because he was a former EMT guy. And it was, when we started that morning, it was like, I think, close to 70 degrees and very humid. But the breeze coming off the lake felt pretty good, and I took off a little quicker than I should have. And by the time I hit 13 miles, I was already about whooped. And the last 10 miles that Kevin was with me, I don't remember a whole lot of it. It was pretty ugly.
And just one foot in front of the other at that point?
Pretty much. It was a run, walk, and the mission that we were raising money for was Lots for Soldiers. And Tim Rosengarten and Paul Sloan was following me in the truck and had stuff for me that I had given to them, but also had some friends come out and dumping water on me. But literally, it was, I don't remember a whole lot of it, but Kevin told me, and I don't remember any of this. He told me probably 2 or 3 times he grabbed me by a bag that we were carrying the American flag in, a backpack, and kept me from falling down. She came out.
I saw it at one point. What mileage was that?
Probably about 23.
I was going to say it was close to the end, and I saw him, and I just thought, he's got to stop. But he looked at me and he says, I know what you're going to say. And Kevin looked at me and says, I got him. And I said, okay. Reluctantly got in the car and left. bring tears to my eyes just thinking about he was in rough shape. But he made it through with Kevin's help.
And so you're not one to quit things lightly. No. You have 49 years of marriage. Tells everyone that. I mean, that's one of those. Yeah. It's like you keep running. I tell couples. Marriage, I've never run a marathon, but marriage is a lot like it. There's highs, there's lows, but you just got to keep moving.
Yep.
That was the toughest one that I ever ran. But the whole time, early on when I knew I was going to have trouble, knew it was going to be, I knew it was going to be rough. I didn't know how rough, but I just kept thinking, God, you got me this far, you can't let me quit.
Amen.
I mean, it's just, I know it's not going to happen, and I just wasn't going to quit. I remember one time Kevin asked me, he told me, he says, you can stop. He says, I'll get the flag there. I said, no. Ain't happening. I've never bowed out of one.
Yeah, it's like Kevin helped me. He might have dragged me at a few points, but you know what? Hey, we don't do anything without help, and so that's a good analogy for life.
Kevin was a lifesaver. It was
awesome.
Because if he wasn't there, I really don't know that I would have finished. I'd have probably face planted.
So you start running in the 80s. You're running into the 40 years later. Where does that light bulb go off that you say, hey, I run, I want to raise some funds for folks, let me put those hands together? Where does the philanthropy come in? How did that come about?
Well, first off, as we were younger, I don't think Barb and I gave as much as what we should have given. That's one thing. Two, we started... well, let me backtrack. My sister, Renee, had breast cancer. And one of the things, she's a survivor, one of the things that they were involved in down in Virginia was the Komen Foundation. So every year down there, they would have a survivor, celebrate survivorship and so forth. And so one of the things was they had a 5K, and you can run that, and it was to raise money. So we just started doing that, we'd get, $250, $500, something like that. And that then the last one, because when I started running again, I have to backtrack a little bit. When I started running again, back in, 2013, I think it was. Yeah. And, I just kept, as my miles grew, I just kept thinking, God, you've given this back to me for some reason, because I didn't run for like 26 years, from 1987 up to 2013. And so it's been given back to me for a reason, and there's got to be a reason. And I just never could quite figure that out. But when we got involved with the Komen deal, and the last one, we raised like a little over $1,000 for that to give to them. It was like, I still wasn't getting it. Yeah. And then the Anderson family, Brian and Kelly, went through their deal with Maddie and all the expense that they had, and they're friends of ours. And I remember this day, we were down shopping in Columbus, and Jenny Snyder called me up and told me she was training for her first marathon, which was going to be the nationwide Columbus Marathon, and asked me if I would do some long runs with her, because she was starting them at like 5 a.m. It's dark, and she didn't want to run by herself. So I said, yeah. So I started doing that with her. And as we got up to about 20 miles for a long run, I thought, okay, I've gone this far, might as well go ahead and jump in and run that thing. Well, with the Anderson family was going through all that, and the community come together, garage sales, bake sales, all that stuff. And I thought, well, why not? Why don't we put it out on Facebook? I'm going to run my first marathon after my knee replacement, and see if we can't raise some money for them. And we put on Facebook that Barb and I would match the donations $1 for $1, thinking, okay, we'd probably raise $1,000.
$1,000, yeah, a couple thousand
like that,
bucks,
which is a lot of money.
Yeah.
Well, the community chipped in about 45, I think, a little over $4,500. So we ended up giving Brian and Kelly $9,115.20.
That's awesome. And that was number one then.
That was number one, and that was like a big, that was like a big slap in the head to me by the Lord that said, are you going to get it now? Really? Go ahead, sweetie.
No, I was just going to say that was a big one where we finally got the message.
Yeah.
You start to see how these could be a vehicle for touching people, for raising funds, and then just a vehicle for different passion projects and that kind of thing.
Yeah, and but we thought we got to be doing it for nonprofits, because you start doing it for individual families. I mean,
we thought
that's really tough. I mean, there's
how do you choose?
There's a dozen families that 2 dozen. We're a county of 40,000 plus.
I know.
There's need everywhere for sure. Now, why don't you give people a rundown as we kind of get into it? I know you got them there. I'd love to hear just the organizations that you've done, and then the amount you were able to, by God's grace, raise for each one.
Yeah. Well, talked about the Anderson family. That was the first one. The second one, I ran Grandma's Marathon, and we did that one for the Choosing Life Pregnancy Center and Our Home Family Resource Center. We started out with the nonprofits, picking 2 of them, and then splitting the money up between them. Raised $17,000 for that one. And then third one, I ran a Kiowa Island Marathon, and we raised money there for the AAA 3, Area Agency on Aging 3, that does cover Mercer County, and then the Matthew 25 group out of the Grand Lake United Methodist Church that distributes money around the world to missions. And then we let Project Everybody Beautiful kind of tag along, and gave them a minor amount of money for that one, because they were just starting. And we wanted to see how they did. But, I mean, they do great things, but we raised $11,497 for that one. And there also, Craig, there is where we got the idea. There's a fellow over in Portland, Indiana, that started a group called Flags for Fallen. And it's where runners from all over the country have carried flags, maybe for a service member that has passed, a police officer,
first responder,
or even someone that just died, if you want to say, before their time, at a young age. And we carried a flag there for Lieutenant Colonel Clifford Gadsden out of South Carolina. The fourth one, ran Grandma's Marathon, did that for the House of Hope, and then Project Everybody Beautiful. We raised $26,074.68. And when I say we raised, I'm talking about this whole area, and even people as far away as Florida, believe me. The fifth one we did, I ran the Kiowa Half. I was injured, but we did that one for Brianna's Hope, and we raised $14,335.50 and carried a flag for Cesare Presley, Private First Class Cesare Presley. Excuse me. Sixth one was the virtual one that we did for Lots for Soldiers, and that one, there was a big jump there, $35,690.77, and we carried flag there for Sergeant Douglas Springer, which is the other reason why I needed to finish. The seventh one did the Grand Lake Marathon, but Jessica Evers and Dina Wilson carried a flag for John Langan in that one, or I should say Sergeant Lawrence Jackson. We did that one for Hand Up Village and raised $57,180. Prior to being injured, I carried a flag for John Langan during my training. The eighth one, the Grand Lake course, was run by Steve Schmidt, Joe Vanderhaar, Jessica Evers, and Kevin Olding. Did that one for the Choosing Life Pregnancy Center and raised $65,796.09. And that flag was carried for Olin Amstutz, a World War II vet. The ninth one, and the most successful one, we did the TriStar Eternal Scholarship Fund, and half of marathon was run by Steve Schmidt and carried a flag for Sergeant Kelly Richards, a detective here in town. We raised $145,402.14. And then the 10th one, we had to cut that short because of some family issues. We've got our grandkids living with us now. So I only did that for 1 month is all we did, and we did that for the Kingdom Harvest Ministries and raised $44,468.61, and that was, like I said, that was just 1 month of work.
Do you have the total over there?
Total raised is $426,559.54.
So let me ask you, does that kind of almost make you laugh when you think about it? What's your reaction to that? Because I know you both to be very humble people. I know you give the Lord the credit, you give the community the credit, but you are who God chose to use for this to raise $500,000 for all these organizations. You never set out to be this great philanthropy couple. What is your reaction when you kind of, I'm sure there's even a sense of joy just kind of reading them off like that of like, wow, what's your reaction to that?
Do you want to answer that?
It's amazing. It's been a kind of a thrill ride, really, because, never expected any of this, never saw it coming, and then to have the Lord make it this successful. It's just, and the community, it's just been mind-boggling. Really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Actually, as I read those, you almost break out in tears because it just never would have imagined, it's hard to imagine, why did God pick us to do this? And, even though there had to be a lot of time put in to do this, not as much time as what some people may think, but it was so easy. It's kind of like when God chooses you to do something and you do it, he makes it happen. I'm not kidding you. When I would go into a business, I would not be in there probably for more than 5 or 10 minutes. And some of that time was waiting. Mm-hmm. It's like he's opened their hearts and minds already before I even got there. Mm-hmm. It was just so, we hardly ever got to know.
Did your a positive reputation start to build as well? Because you see those numbers start to go up. Mm-hmm. Did people start to go, oh, I've heard of what you do and that kind of thing, knew the money was well stewarded, handled well?
Yeah, I think a lot of that was important. I know a couple things I think was really important, and it was fed back to me from people that have given, is that, one, we're making face-to-face appearances. We're coming to them, face-to-face, putting in the time and telling them what's going on. And then I think at the end, we always send out a thank you letter, letting people know how successful or how it went. Mm-hmm. So they know, they know what the result was. So many times I think people give money to things and that's it. Mm-hmm. Never hear any more about it except getting a receipt and that's it. Mm-hmm. Well, we always want them to know.
Get the story.
Where your money went and what it's used for.
And what happened during that time,
Why do you think the TriStar scholarships were so successful? $140,000, that's an incredible sum of money. Why? What do you think? Is it just the community? Was it just the right thing at the right time? Why do you think those were so successful?
Well, I think God had a big hand in it, and then I think the concept where you got a scholarship that's going to go on, and the facility out there is amazing. I didn't know what kind of a place they had out there until we went and visited, and it's really great. All the different programs they have for the kids and the good start in life that they can get from that. It was really, I guess, eye-opening, and I think getting that word out there and people saying, oh, yeah, this is a good cause. And then I think the fact that we had the eternal thing attached to it, I think people like the idea of maybe having their name attached to putting a scholarship together that would continue to serve the kids out there at TriStar forever. Can
you describe how you'd handle that? Because that was different, where you would give the money over to the organization. How did the TriStar Scholarship Fund work? You did that with the Civic Center, correct? Or
with the Civic Foundation, yeah. And it's an endowed scholarship where, this is going to go on forever. Excuse me. it's going to go on forever, which I think people like that. Basically give one time and that's it. And you're going to be providing scholarships for, long past
Yeah,
that.
usually giving's the exact opposite. They ask you to give every single time for over and over and over, and it only goes out, versus this is give one time and it continues to go out.
Yeah, and I've been thinking about it, prior to coming in here. I kind of wondered, okay, God, this was really great. Why didn't we do this long before this? But obviously, like you had said, the reputation, I think, got stronger, and I think this is what he wanted, and it came, I think, at the right time, because it seems like over the past maybe couple of years, you hear a lot more about vocational, needing the trades and everything, and so I think that also factored into it, especially with different factories looking
labor
for
shortages.
help, so good help. And it's a real testament of how TriStar is run. I mean, Tim and Brian and all the staff out there, I mean, they've got a reputation of how well that place is run, how good the teachers are. And they don't, not that teachers forget about students, but, they're following up with kids, and seeing how they're doing and everything, and encourage them to come back. Tell us what's going on in your life.
Yeah, when I was on school board, I got to know them a little bit more. And my dad was a trade school grad and provided a great life for us. And frankly, I probably should have been a trade school kid. Looking back on your life, I probably should have done that. But one of the things I always loved about TriStar is they value attendance as a major portion of how you get into their programs. So it doesn't just go to the kids that are naturally academically gifted, but if you show up, that's part of the battle. And it's not untrue for your training and stuff like that. You're not Usain Bolt running out there, but you got to show up, you got to do it. And so that's one of the things I really appreciate about what TriStar's done, is said, hey, you can have great grades, but if you're a flake and you don't show up, well, guess what? You can be a great carpenter, but if you don't show up to the site, once or twice a week, or you show up late, or you're constantly leaving people hanging, that's not going to work either.
Right.
So they've done a good job with that. Yeah, my wife and I gave to the TriStar scholarship, and we were able, it was just something joyous this year when they went out for the first time to think, hey, there it goes. That ball's in motion, and in 2023, it'll happen again. How many scholarships went out this past year?
Well, it was advertised that we were going to do 5. But as we went through the applications and everything, there was another student in there that, really impressed, and we had an anonymous donor give $1,000 to make sure that child also had a scholarship. So, right now it's going to be 5 going forward.
The goal is $1,000.
Well, right now, I mean, as it grows, then you're going to have a decision to make on whether to give out more scholarships or raise the value.
Yeah. Which is awesome, because you'd think, in 20 years or 30 years, those are conversations that are going to be probably by the next generation from you guys. But you got that started, and now it's off to the races.
Yeah, and we've made our son, Andrew, contact person, so that, when we can't do this anymore, that, they'll be part of it. And actually, we had him and his wife help us go through the applications. And the other thing, too, about that process, I really want to make sure people understand this, that, as we've done this over the past 6-7 years, we've got to know a lot of people.
Yeah.
So we didn't want anybody to think that we've been prejudiced towards the kids or anything. So TriStar whited out all the names, whited out the parents.
And that's really nice. Yeah, because it's like, just go off what's on the paper.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
We didn't know who any of the students were as we were going through the process.
Yeah, because even if, the truth is, if we're all honest about ourselves, even if it's subconscious, you think, boy, that's a good kid.
Yeah.
You think, and you hopefully would it be all positive, but I know that kid from ball, or I know that kid from church, or I know their parents, they need help a little bit. And you think, and you start to weight that a little more. And it's nice as when you're given that, you say, no, I don't even want that. I want just the folks who've earned it, who have really put their best foot forward.
That's what we thought too. So we insisted that.
And in a community where everyone knows everyone and everyone's related.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We didn't want anybody thinking that we, did this so that we could make sure
certain people. Yeah.
So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why I think you were so well received by the community. There's integrity with what you guys do, and there has to be, because if we've all seen nightmare stories of people doing awful things in the name of philanthropy, and so when there's integrity with it. And the checks got right to the organizations and that kind of thing. Right. You guys kept your hands off it so that donors would feel like, wow, I know exactly what's going on here.
Wow. My money is going where they say it's going. Mm-hmm. We were real picky about that.
Yeah.
That's one of the other reasons why we always put it out on Facebook, who donated and how much.
Right.
Except if you wanted to be anonymous, for two reasons. One, that it's out there, that, hey, this is who's given. And the other reason, too, is because, hey, if a friend, if you gave, when you gave, or if you gave, some friend of yours may say, hey, Greg Flack, he gave, so I think we're going to too.
Yeah, I had a pastor friend purchase some stuff for the Kingdom Harvest auction just because he saw... And then he saw what the ministry was, and he thought, well, hey, I'll give. So he purchased a cutting board. Mm-hmm. So I sent that off to Toledo, and Pastor Dave and Debbie Carpenter bought that just to support the ministry. Mm-hmm. But they saw it all through Facebook and stuff like that. They had never heard about it, but it was just a unique way for them to be a part of it. And that's where, again, social media can be a pretty bad and negative place at times, but there's other times where it brings people together, and it's wonderful.
Yeah, and you know what? With this particular one, I like to tell this story, is that normally after we do one of these missions, it's like we're done with it for a couple months and don't even think about it at all. And I'm telling you, it's like within a few days, God just started putting it on my mind anyway, kids, kids, and it's like, okay, what's that all about? And as it just went on, it just became apparent, I had to do something with TriStar. And then, as she said, we went out there and looked at the place, and because, we knew it was there. We didn't know how nice it was.
Yeah, I think most people just drive by on 703 and you just, okay. It's a nice facility, great, trade school, great. Yeah. But if you've never met Tim or Brian or what they're doing, or a graduate,
Yeah.
So it was like, it was like once we went out there, it became a no-brainer.
Well, and you might not know the graduates, but when you've tried to find a carpenter and you can't find one, when you've tried to find HVAC and you can't find one, when you've tried to find all, robotics machinists, all these things, we need that trade school for sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And for these kids, they can come out making wonderful money, provide for themselves and someday a family with no debt. They're not $100K in debt and still looking for a job. They're starting out with great training, great pay. They're 18. I hope in fact, I worry about them the other way. They're going to have so much money. It's like, let's make sure you spend that wisely.
Yeah.
Well, not to knock college, because that's great for, doctors, lawyers, people, but that's not for everyone. Yep. And I think this trade school is great for, like you said,
and what I've told folks even about pastors, because right now, I got my bachelor's, I got my master's, and and I needed that. But, if you're looking to get into ministry to get rich, you've sorely misjudged the marketplace. There's a few on TV that you think, well, hey, that's like saying I like to play baseball, I'll be Derek Jeter. That's not going to happen. And so we've been rethinking. I think a lot of career fields are really rethinking this of, do we really need a college degree, or is there ways to train and equip our workers with value? And what I laugh about with people now is when you have access to things like YouTube or whatever, and you can get whole courses for free, boy, you're going to have more and more people going, well, but I want to ask you where you guys have seen maybe God work in the midst of these, or any cool stories that you've seen that just come to mind over the course of them. It doesn't have to be one in particular, but just anything that kind of comes up as you've seen God do. I'd imagine there's many things, but something that comes to mind.
You got one? I've got one.
Yeah, go ahead.
Matter of fact, with the TriStar one, actually, is what it is I think we originally had a goal of hitting $100,000, which was mind-boggling to begin with, when knowing that we had raised over 65,000 one time. That's a huge leap. But again, that's
did anyone try and talk you down at all from that, or
there were one or two people that kind of, when I told them, they kind of rolled their eyes and said, "Boy,
good luck."
Yeah. As a matter of fact, one fella said that, and I understood what he was saying.
Yeah.
He says, "This is probably not going to pull at heartstrings like some of these others have." I said, "Yeah, but this is just what I feel like was laid on my heart, and so we're just going to fly with it." But anyway, we get to, I think we were at about $75,000. And I remember sitting at the table with Barb, and I told her, I was starting to sweat it because it's like mid-November, and this thing's going to probably end beginning in December. I told her, if we could just get to $85,000, 3.5% of that will get us. 3.5% is what you're supposed to be allowed to give away through these funds, but we could get those 3 scholarships, because originally we started out with 3, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, originally we were going to give 3 away.
And he thought, we're not going to make it.
Yeah, and it started really to sweat it. And I'm not kidding you, Craig, within probably a few days, it was like the floodgates open. I mean, the Eagles made a big donation. It came out of nowhere. Checks started pouring in. And again, it was like God slapped me up the head for probably the 100th time saying, "When are you ever going to have faith in me?" And before you know it, I mean, we're over $100,000, and now we're starting to think about a 4th scholarship, and then it goes beyond that, and now we get to the beginning of December, and I think if I remember right, we had 4 scholarships in hand that we could give. And thought, no, we're not going to let up on this, because we were part way to a 5th. We're just going to kind of keep going into December further than what we had anticipated, and see if we can't get that 5th kid a scholarship. And by golly, we made it. And then someone came forward, and we made it 6.
We had that one really touching application that felt like really needed to have this person get one, and then it came through. So it was amazing.
But we've had, kids, give money, which that's really touching, when a kid's putting in money. And then students out there at TriStar even went out and raised money. I think it was like $1,500 that they donated themselves to this fund. So
now, is that fund still open, that if someone's watching this and they go, "Oh my gosh, that sounds great," could they go to the Civic Foundation and make a gift into that fund, it'll be a part of the same exact purpose?
Well,
TriStar Eternal Scholarships.
Yes, for sure. A matter of fact, I'm glad you brought that up, because with what's gone on in our family, we've had three of our youngest grandchildren placed with us. We won't go into the reasons or anything, but they've been placed with us, which takes a lot of time, because these kids are
at any age. Trust me, I'm sitting here at 35 thinking that couch looks pretty good for a nap with 2, so let alone 3.
Well, we've had, they're like 1.5. Kanan will be 3, and then Summer will be 6, and Kanan's autistic, so he's in some therapy. So it just takes a lot of time. So, we haven't been able to get any new ones started. We don't even know if any more are going to be able to continue or not. But one thing we're going to try and do, and I think I've already put this on Facebook months back that we were thinking about it, but the TriStar scholarship was so well received that what we would like to do is, through a letter campaign, try and raise more money for that. And the reason why is that as we went through these applications, some of these kids, 60% of the kids go and further their education even further. But some of these kids, you look at the amounts that it is costing them a year, upwards of $35,000, $40,000 a year. $1,000 is a lot of money, but it's a drop in the bucket.
Yeah.
And
especially as inflation continues to go up. And
so if we could raise more money to put in there, we could get these kids more money. And so we want to do that. And I think we're going to try and do that through a letter campaign. I've been wanting to put a letter together for the last month and just haven't found the time to do it, but I want to do that. But now that Barb is well and everything, I might even be able to get out and make a few calls. I'm not probably going to be able to do as many as what I used to, but at least be able to get out and see some people.
One of the things that's unique about that too is if someone's watching, all of us have what the Lord has blessed us with, but when our life comes to an end, it's left behind. So we can't take it with us. No one's, what's the old saying? There's no U-Hauls pulling into heaven. And so one of the things people can do too is thinking creatively about end-of-life estates. TriStar is going to be there. The need for the trades are going to be there. I always tell the young people in our church, go get a job a robot can't do. A robot is not going to be able to wire your house, not for at least a long time. Right. Like a robot might help you fix a car, but we need mechanics. The robot's not going to show up and fix your HVAC, at least for a long time. Go do that kind of thing. We need those jobs. So if someone's sitting there thinking about their end of life in estate planning, I know the Civic Foundation can help them with that too. Trusts, assets, stock transfers, and stuff like that. So that'd be great to see that person that's like, well, I've got that $500,000 sitting around and I like the trades and I was a carpenter. Well, hey, there you go. There's something for you.
There's a good thought right there. I hadn't even thought about that at all.
You just call Rod and let him know and he'll put you in contact. And because the truth is, again, having that gift that outlives you, there's something special and unique about that. And I always tell folks, because we've been blessed as a church, folks leave behind bequeath to the church. I always tell them, be specific with what you want, because there's just a reality, and this isn't to throw shade on anyone. If you tell your kids, I want you to be generous, they might think, well, $1,000 donation's pretty generous. Yeah. You might have been thinking $100,000 was generous. They might think, so you can work out these things. And I know the Jerry Andrews Fund at the Civic Foundation has been a major blessing for the schools, and he's doing scholarships. Jerry's someone I got to meet several years ago. A wonderful man, passed away, and then set up an eternal scholarship fund through the Civic Foundation. So just a pitch for people as they're thinking about it.
Yeah, but to answer your original question, they can give any time. All they have to do is make a check out to the Mercer County Civic Foundation, but make sure that you write on the memo line, TriStar Eternal on that, so they know exactly which TriStar fund that it goes to. And if they don't mind, it'd be nice for them to send that check to us so we can record it, keep track of it, because one of the things we have also is a sheet called the Eternal Sheet, and we list everybody on there that has given. And
that wants to be listed.
That wants to be listed, and all of them have, have wanted to be listed. So each student, when they get that scholarship, they also get that sheet to see the vast number, over 300 people and businesses that have given and made their scholarship possible.
That's very cool.
And I think that's important because they can see the local support that they have had, and hopefully then it will encourage them to raise their families in our area also.
Yeah, and feel a sense of pride, people investing in you.
Yeah. Right.
So what do you tell someone? You guys have done hard things. You're doing hard things right now with some family stuff. What do you tell someone right now that's sitting there watching and they've got that God-sized vision on their heart, but they are thinking, you got the wrong person, Lord. Like, it ain't me. What would you tell them?
Do it. I mean, if God lays it on your heart, I mean, you just can't sit there and think it's going to happen. You know, whatever it happens to be, you just need to do it. It's a leap of faith. I mean, one thing personally I thought about when we started doing this is, okay, you're putting this out there and it's going to be a major fail. Well, again, no faith, Rod. And, but yeah, if God's laid it on your heart, all you got to do is just follow through with it. He's going to open the doors for you, and it's going to happen in amazing ways.
That's been what's really been amazing to me is how, not that running a marathon is little effort, but how what we do has just snowballed and taken on a life of its own, and how he has, just exploded it and made it what it is.
Mm-hmm.
400,000, like you said, almost $500,000. Who we would have never thought.
No, not at all. And the running part of it, again, God gave this running back to me,
Mm-hmm.
and I know He used that because, when we started these, it was like, nobody really knew us. Not that many people knew us at all.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah, you didn't raise kids in the community. You moved here later in
Right.
life.
Later in
Yeah.
life,
so it was like, at that time, it was like, okay, when people do things like that, run a marathon or walk a distance or whatever, people are giving money and they support that. Well, I think God just kind of used that to
Open
get
the doors.
open the door and notoriety. And, it got to the point where probably about halfway through these, never really even talked about running. People weren't given because I was raising money. They were given because they loved the nonprofits that we had chosen, to go forward with.
Mm-hmm.
And so the running just didn't even become a factor anymore. And thank God for that, because as you saw, people were running for me because I was either injured or it was mostly just injuries. And I'm not even running that much right now.
Now, I did see you are getting back to some running, though.
Again.
Light.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like I've restarted. I don't know how many times, but I was starting to get doing pretty good. I was up for a long run of 7 miles before she had her hip replacement surgery. And then when she fell, it was like, that running, it wasn't happening at all. And we talked. I mean, when the kids came into our house on March 31st, running was taking a back seat anyway. The focus was
Everything took a back seat.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
pretty
It's
much.
like our lives just kind of
Flipped.
Yeah, it flipped completely. So, but I'm glad I can get back and do a little running because it just feels good.
And it's the perfect time of year. It's nice and cool, right?
Yeah.
I think yesterday I was going for a walk and it was, I think the feels like was in the 90s. And it's like, my daughter asked, she's like, how was it? I'm like, it feels like I'm walking through soup. But other than that, because I'm in the evening and it's like,
Right.
you can't even go in the morning right now. It's like, well, you can. It'll just be dark and humid. Or you can wait till the afternoon and it'll be bright and humid, but it'll be humid no matter what.
And that's usually when I get out is first thing in the morning, hopefully before the kids wake up and the day gets started. So, and man, it was bad yesterday.
Yeah, definitely. Well, anything else that you wanted to share with folks or anything, any other closing thoughts that you had that have come to mind?
You probably don't even have enough time for this, but I mean, one thought I have is, as I look back, I mean, for me personally, God was working in my life before I was even saved. Yeah. I mean, I when I was younger, I really didn't, I wasn't comfortable with going out and talking to people. We moved about every 4 years when Dad got promoted, and it would take me probably a month before I'd make a friend or something. I just, was kind of an introvert until I got a job at a gas station, and these two old guys said, it's when you had to pump gas for people, said, your job just isn't to pump gas, it's to talk to our customers, because we got a lot of long-time customers, and that kind of forced me into that. And I, thinking back on that, I know God put me into that situation leading up to this time.
Mm-hmm.
And there's just, to make a long story short, there were lots of other things in between there before I was even saved that He put me in positions to get me to where, to the things that what we're doing right now. So it's like, people don't, I never thought about it, but, God is working in people's lives all the time. And even before you're saved. And it's just amazing how this whole thing has worked out.
Mm-hmm. Well, I want to say thank you to you guys for coming in, but for everything you do. I was on the board of the Pregnancy Center when you've done them. I was on the board at the House of Hope. I serve on a lot of boards. I was on the school board when you were doing TriStar Scholarship. So luckily I'm off all the boards right now, so I can focus on things like this. But you guys have done a wonderful job, and I wanted to have you guys on, and I hope what folks, as they're watching, for two specific reasons. One, I hope they're seeing, and I mean this as a compliment, Rod and Barb are normal folks. They're just like me. I think people have made superheroes out of folks that try and follow God faithfully and just do what he's called them to and then end up doing big things. And they see big totals and they see big numbers and they think, well, these two must just be, this dynamic power couple who took philanthropy 101 and knew it. And it's like, far from it. And as they hear these marathons, they go, well, it wasn't exactly small beginnings, but compared to where it ended, it was small beginnings, 140% growth from the first, scholarship or from the Maddie's fund or Anderson's fund to all the way to TriStar. But I hope what people think is, well, hey, if they can do it, well, maybe I can. We'd have a wonderful community with a bunch of people. And if folks were just going after what God puts on their heart, I think they'd find a lot of people that want to support it.
You're right. And I'll tell you, it don't even have to be about money.
No.
I mean, I can remember, coming in off a long run in the subdivision in the winter, about freezing my butt off and with about a mile to go. And I saw an old lady, I should say an elderly lady, trying to scrape her windshield and having a really tough time of it. It was iced over and everything. And I looked at that and I thought, I just got to stop and help her. Yeah. And I just stopped and helped her do that. And you would not believe how grateful that was. I made her day. Mm-hmm. I mean, it can be just something as simple as that.
That still small voice. And I've often said, I heard of a group of older church ladies who like to knit. And one of them got the idea of, what if they made a hand-sewn hat, stocking cap, for every kid that came into foster care in their community, because so many of them felt like I was taken away from family. And so they'd write a little note and they'd say, you might not feel like you have a grandma right now. I'll be your grandma. Here's a handmade hat.
Oh,
I mean, think of how touching that is. It has nothing to do with money. No. It has nothing to do with people think, well, I'm not good at anything. It's like, sure you are. You knit, you sew, you can crochet a hat.
Right.
You can put a ball of yarn in front of me. I'm not going to produce you a hat. Yeah. And so there's just things like that where I think people go, well, I didn't think I could do that. Well, why can't you? Yeah. If God's put it on your heart. And the other thing, I just wanted you guys to feel celebrated, hopefully. I don't know that you give yourself enough credit. I know you certainly don't. But, man, just everything you've done, it has been such an inspiration for me to sit back and watch. And I think a lot of us to sit back and watch as like, who are these carpenters? What are they doing out there? And to the point where it's like, man, Rod's at it again. And all these different organizations that are near and dear to my heart and near and dear to a lot of people's heart in the community. So I just wanted to say thank you. You've helped impact, because the truth is, money does make the mission move forward and it helps open doors and it does these things. Ultimately, it's the Lord. But when you can't have staff, or you don't have the ability to purchase the needs that you have, or if it's the House of Hope to pay the director, or at the pregnancy center to buy the 4D ultrasound machine, like, these are incredible tools and assets that you've given. So I just wanted to say thank you. If you never do another one, it was enough even along the way. So I hope you feel that way. And then I hope the Lord just opens a path and you do 30 more. Who knows? Whatever his will is.
Yeah, we hope so too.
But if you don't, I hope you look back and think, that was pretty cool. What a neat thing to be a part of. When your story's said and done, if they can say, well, they were pretty generous and they helped organize people to be generous, that's not a bad thing to have said about you.
No, thanks. And what you said is correct. We're a part of it.
Mm-hmm. Small part.
Yes, because so many people. Mm-hmm. Have
basically
given.
We gave them the avenue.
Yeah,
gave them the idea. Yeah,
that's
it. And again, helping people with this is where Christian integrity goes so far for folks. If they got to see that, because if you don't have the integrity, no one's going to join in your missions. No one's going to be a part of it. But if you do, folks go, well, I trust you. And so even when you start going in and you think, well, I didn't have to talk to him that much, because they started going, well, if Rod thinks it's a good thing, and you investigated all of these, I know because I was on the board, you didn't go haphazardly in any of them. You tried to be very wise. But folks would go, well, I don't know. Rod thinks so. It's kind of like having your fiduciary check it out for you. And think, hey, if this is a good investment, you're the guy. So
yeah, it's kind of seemed that way.
Well, thank you guys for coming in. Lord's
Thank you for
blessings in,
having
in
us.
your situation right now. And is it okay if I pray for you before we go?
Sure,
Absolutely.
you bet.
God, thank you for the Carpenters, and I just pray that you'd continue to give them strength and energy for the challenges ahead in their day-to-day life, but also, Lord, for that they would just feel your grace and your presence in everything they do, that they had just had an opportunity to serve you, make your name known, and help wonderful organizations. We certainly pray for all of them that they have helped in the past, and just ask that you'd continue to be with them in the future. We pray this all in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.